Greetings, friends and fellow cigar box guitar enthusiasts. Del Puckett here, and welcome to part 3 of the 2020 CBG Cigar Box Guitar Builders Masterclass. To get you up to speed, you need to watch parts 1 and parts 2, and that will get you up to speed here. So, just a real quick, I did hit this thing here with some boiled linseed. And let it soak in, and look how, how shiny this is. My gosh, that's like beautiful. Oh, you can actually see some of the drippies there coming out of the frets. So that, and also the inside of the box. I have blocks on the corners, mounting blocks underneath the notch, and then one in the back here. So notice there is a subtle difference here in height. This one here is 1 5/8 inches tall, whereas this one here is 1 3/4 inches. And that is to preserve the subtle back angle Okay, I did have the input jack and also the sound grommets on the top. So now, let's get going on with the frets. There's going to be a lot of information in this section here, and I'm going to speak fast, so I hope I don't miss anything. So, right off the bat, with these traditional size headstocks, with the heel right here, it's just going to rock back and forth. So I don't want it to rock back and forth, so I get a little block here and set it on there so it's nice and stable. Okay, number one. Number two, you're going to want to get some of these wire cutters that are flush on one side and have the bevel on the other side. Okay, so these are flat on this side. And then you want to make sure that your fret slots are free from debris and clean. You can use the your fretting saw. You can use a business card. Anything you can to make sure to ensure that there's no debris in those slots, because if there is, you'll have a difficult time getting your frets to seat flat. Now, what I like to do is I like to cut back the bottom part. Here's the top on this side here. The bottom is I like to cut that back at an angle, like about a 45-degree angle here. And then I put that on the treble side of the fretboard. And then using the flat side here, I just cut these flat. Okay. Again, I'll give myself a little bit of an angle here. And rinse and repeat. So you can see that starting to come together. Okay, so all of the frets have been installed, all except for the last one, the 0 fret. So the 0 fret, I go for a jumbo. And the same thing, I'll cut my 45-degree angle here. And the reason why I do that here is because I don't want the ends to pop out, the little spike things to pop out after I file them. Nothing worse than being able to feel those frets right there. So the little 45 helps reduce the amount that these things stick out here. So the last one here is going to be the jumbo 0 fret. And the little tapping hammer here has got a little Teflon tip on that side, so I can I don't use any glue, just smash them right into the place. All right, now that we've got our frets installed, we're going to want to take off these edges, and these edges are real. You can see those things sticking out. Okay, not good. So I'm going to show you 5 ways to do it. The first way to do it is you can get like a little grinder and just take them off that way. Or number 2, you can just get traditional file and take them off that way. That actually works. They also make these little specialty files that are just this little handheld thing with the file, and of course you can tighten it and take it out and loosen it and clean it or whatever if you need to. And these things here are meant to ride on the fretboard and go up and down and file them all uniformly. I'm going to show you how I do it using my grinding wheel. All right, here's the grinder. I have the coarse wheel on this side, and that's for like sharpening axes and stuff. And I have the fine wheel on this side, and that's for like doing fine things like frets of a guitar. Oh, and I wanted to show you here the Cigar Box Guitar Festival from June 2017. All right, one of the tricks I do is I get a white piece of paper and I put it underneath my wheel here, and that is so that I can actually see a nice contrast from the wheel, the neck, and what I'm trying to grind off. So this is how I do it. And here's another cool method. So, whichever method you end up going with, the goal is to get these edges to all be straight. Okay, next we're going to polish these fret ends. So what I do is I go get these little mini files, and I particularly like the one that's shaped like this. It's flat, and then it's thin. And then what I do is I take either a grinding wheel or another file, and I file the top smooth and the bottom smooth so that there's only teeth on the wide sides. So I can actually take the smooth side, put it on the fretboard, and slide it, and it's not going to hurt anything, right? Because it's like smooth, smooth, smooth. Then what I do here is with one motion, I'm going to roll over the top of the fret. And so this is how it looks. Next fret, next fret, next fret. Now what I do for one fret, I do for them all. I don't just sit there on one fret and go like this. I'll do one motion and then I'll go to each fret and I'll do the same exact thing for each fret. And you want to get both sides. And again, this is just a subtle thing. All we're doing is we're just taking off that little sharp edge on the top side here. And then what I do is I like to inspect it with a magnifying glass just to see exactly how good or how bad I'm doing. And then what I like to do is buff these edges with some fine grit sandpaper. So I'll start off at 220, work up to 320, and then polish it off with 400. All right, moving right along. Now we are going to notch the neck here for a single coil pickup. And also, I'm going to cut a hole in the box where this thing mounts. Okay, so the first thing I do is I center up where the pickup is going to be, and then with just a Sharpie, I just mark it. Again, you want to make sure it's center. I'm marking on the inside. You can see how that looks there. All right, so there's many, many, many ways to cut out these holes here. I'll show you a couple of them. Number one, you can get like a tiny little drill, and then you can just drill them out like a create like a little line of holes all the way around, like a little stamp, right? And then just punch it out and then file it. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it kind of makes a mess, but just cut it out with a Dremel. What I like to do is just drill a hole and then either use a coping saw or my scroll saw, and I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so if I'm going to put this on the scroll saw, the first thing I need to do is I need to take the top off. So what I do is I just get a razor blade, and I carefully just slice right along the edge here, because I don't want to tear the paper. I want it to be perfect slice. And you might have to do it on the inside as well. This is really common. And then this thing just comes right off. Voila. All right, so I cut a little hole in the top, and these little scroll saws here, the blade comes off, and so what I do is stick it through the hole, and then all right, and because I just can't seem to help myself, I get a little round file and I file the inside of this thing perfectly smooth so that it fits perfectly and beautifully. Next, I'm going to put my neck in here so I know exactly where to cut that pickup notch. So what I do is I drill a little hole in these mounting blocks. Now what I like to do is I like to get this long 1/8 of an inch drill bit, and I can't tell you how many times this thing has come in handy. And drill it all the way through. Right, so now that I have a hole at the back here, and this is where the screw goes in. And now what I do is I'll put my neck into place where it needs to go, and then from the back, now I'll drill this guy here and I'll get like a little pilot, so I know exactly. Of course, you got to make sure that it's perfectly straight up and down, and then just give it just a little tiny little hole, and that's just to mark it. And then I'll come back here and actually drill it exactly where it needs to be. Okay, because every cigar box is different size, you're going to need to get a bunch of different size screws. Okay? Because what you want to do is you want to go through that block, right, and then into the neck wood. So you're going to have to decide which one of these. And so I already measured, and I determined that this one here is going to give me enough to go through the block and into the neck wood for both the front and the back. All right, so I have the neck in here. This is just temporary, right? And this is just so that I can put the top on, and then with a magic marker, I can actually mark where that pickup is going to go exactly. So now I need to determine how deep to go on this notch. So what I do is I figure out how low this pickup needs to be in order to clear the strings. Okay, and then I just strike a line there, and that's where I'll notch it out. Now, it's important to have a nice thick heel there, because if you notch it out too much here, it's going to weaken this little point right here, right? So it's good to have a nice, strong, large heel, especially if you're doing neck position pickups. All right, we notched out using the same method that I used to notch out the other part, and it's been measured twice, cut once to get to the exact right height. Because this particular cigar box guitar is going to have a three-way switch, it's going to switch between the single coil and an embedded piezo underneath the saddle, I need to mark out and measure 23 inches from the 0 fret or from the nut to where the saddle's going to be, and then strike a line so that I know exactly where to route out or to cut out with a Fosner bit where to embed my piezo there. So I go with a Forstner bit that's larger than the diameter of the piezo. And I only go down about 1/8 of an inch. Another thing that I always do is I always file out with a file this little part right here from either the pickup all the way down to just below the saddle or just below the piezo, and that's so that I have a gap in here so that the top of the cigar box is only touching either in the corners where the saddle is or right here where this little shelf is right there. Everywhere else the cigar box guitar top is free floating. This is what it looks like. And it doesn't have to be much, just barely maybe 1/8 of an inch. Just enough to clear that. One of the little tricks I do is I take some wire cutters and I cut the little notch on the little sidewall right here. And that is so that the wires can fit through. Now notice how the red goes to the center and the black goes to the outside. That's how these piezos are wired. And so this little notch right there, that's so that the wires can fit through there. Okay, so now what we're going to do, heat up your glue gun, put a little dabble right in the center. Not a whole lot, just enough. And be careful because this is hot. Now we're just going to embed the piezo. Just kind of smash it down right in there and make sure that our wires go through our little notch there. And then what I do is get like a card, a business card or anything. Give it some more on the top. Not a whole lot. You kind of have to guesstimate how much is it going to take to fill that hole. And if you get a little extra, it's okay. And then this is what I like to do, is I like to smash it in place so that it's exactly flush to the bottom side there, and I actually can feel the heat coming through there. That's how I know it's a perfect flush seal. All right, that's a wrap for this video. Be sure to tune into the next video where we install the pickups and all the wiring and electronics. We will install tuners, maybe get some strings on. We'll see how far we get. But until the next video, remember that 6 tuners are 3 tuners too many.